Hey, thanks for joining me this evening. I'm back at my shop now, and I've got some cool things that I want to share with you here. First off, I'm going to tease our next podcast episode. You'll recall that we recorded one in Vegas, and I got the opportunity to spend a couple hours with Major Devin Detliff, the F-16 pilot, and that was a hoot. God, I had a great time. It was a lot of fun. In Pomona, I had another opportunity to talk to another legend, this one a legend in drag racing for a long time. Anybody that's won multiple world championships in Top Fuel is way up the food chain, and it was my absolute honor to be able to interview this guy on things that I've been fascinated with that he's been doing for several years now. And I did, look, you guys can go out on the web and find records and ETs and how many Wallies and how many this and who's got the best reaction time. The stats, it's interesting, but that's not where my heart is. I want to talk about the stuff that you can't get on the web, the stories that we tell, the details that we only learn about when we're BSing with each other. Because I learn all kinds of stuff, but it ain't on the web. So I want that inside drag racing type stuff that I've mentioned before. And holy crap, Batman, did we get a bunch of that. So let me show you my quick tease that I put together here for our guest on the next podcast that we're editing right now. Sean's got all the footage. He's editing it right now. But check this out. You're going to like it if you like drag racing at all. If you don't, you're dead and shouldn't be here. This is not the channel for you if you don't like this. Check this out. Bring up this little video that I made. Here we go. Hang on. Check this out.
The two-seat cars that we have in drag racing, for me, seem a little soft. Like we're to the point where it's like I could go to the dealership and buy a Dodge Hellcat and run quicker than the two-seat cars that are here. So It's like, well, okay, so here's the idea of doing it.
That's right, brother. Larry DIXON Jr. was my guest, and I got to spend quite a bit of time with him in our pits in Pomona, right in front of the race car. It was awesome. And as you can probably tell, the thing that I'm most interested in that he's done is to build the world's only two-seat Top Fuel, by God, Top Fuel car, and he owns it, and he puts people in it, and it's awesome. I've watched many videos online about that car for years. I've been interested in it for years because nobody else has done it, for God's sake. And then there was a little controversy with NHRA. Hey, there's a big shock. Controversy with NHRA. Oh, everybody's stunned. Raise their hand. Yeah, well, me too. But Larry was so gracious, so kind, and so I didn't push that part at all. What I want to talk about was this two-seater car that he's did, why, and how did it come about. And I learned stuff I have never seen online at all about how this thing came together and what he did. It was awesome, and it was humbling. It was so cool to learn stuff that you just can't get anywhere else. So the next Cool Kids Club podcast will feature Larry DIXON Jr. We do spend a little bit of time talking about some of his past, because it is fascinating with 3 world championships in Top Fuel. I mean, it's just stunning. With his father winning Top Fuel back in 1970. Oh, my God. Just incredible heritage. Very, very cool. But that two-seater really captivated my attention, and I wanted to learn more about that, and I did. And you guys can learn more about that on this next episode. So it'll be coming out as soon as Sean gets done with the editing, hopefully. Probably the first next week, I would imagine. I'm recording this right now on Wednesday evening after Pomona. So that's number 1 is Larry DIXON Jr. in the Cool Kids Club. Very cool. It was awesome. Second thing I want to talk to you about is also something I've never done before. Like I've never interviewed Larry DIXON before. Well, here's another one I've never done before. I've thought about this a lot, but not till tonight am I recording this to share with you guys. And I don't know if I'm going to regret this or not, but I just feel in my heart it's the right thing to do. Good luck to us all. And Lord, you know my heart. Okay, here we go. So, there's no big secret that my car has not run stellarly, if that's a word, for a while. And I want to show you a few things here. But before I do, I want to be crystal freaking clear here. I don't want any misunderstandings about this. This is not about any one person on my team, mistakes that have been made. It's not about that. In fact, let me start at the bottom line and work back up. You want to know what the bottom line is? Everything in that car, everything that it does and doesn't do is my responsibility. It's my fault, or it's my reward if it hauls ass. So I'm responsible for everybody, paying the bills, getting the right parts there, getting the car there with the right support equipment. That's a major pain in the ass. Oh my God, just trying to get your stuff there, especially on your Southern California roads. Bless your heart. But oh my God, I've been to motocross races with whoop-de-doos that were less dramatic than driving down I-5 below Sacramento. It's just nuts. Anyway, all the logistics, then getting a driver, training a driver, having crew that are there for beer and glory, frankly. I mean, they don't make a bunch of money. They don't make any money, really. I mean, I help them here and there, but they're not doing this for money. They're doing this, as I say, for beer and glory. You've got to love the sport to want to pay the price to do this, and it's a lot of dang hard work. So these folks, all of them, have put their heart into it. Nobody's made mistakes because they stayed up late at night and said, watch this, I'm going to really screw this thing up. That doesn't happen. Poop happens, and it's not easy. So I want to be crystal clear. Number one, it's all my fault. It's all my responsibility, good or bad. I'm not unhappy, and I'm not unhappy with anybody. But I do want to show you what I do and deal with. So I'm not unhappy with anybody, and it's nobody's fault. It's mine. And I've got really good news. I've got the car to run way better, made big progress, and I want to share that with you. So with that in mind, I need to give you a little perspective. Again, the behind the rope stuff that I've never seen anybody share. I've caught glimpses of this on various things I've actually seen on TV, but only because the camera happened to be in the room when the owner, operator, driver, whoever had this software up on the screen by accident, I think. Let me show you what I mean. This is the software that we use to run the car. It's called RacePak. That's the brand of the computer that's on the car. The software is called Data Link. So all those up there are various channels of data that the computer will record from any given run or time we start the car. Let me explain a couple things. Number one, most of the channels are hardwired channels, meaning, as an example, with engine RPM. So we've got two mags, so guess what? We've got two engine RPM channels. So those are both mags. So there's two mags, so there's two lines. So they just overlay one another. So that's what the motor's doing. And it's just measuring that off of what the mags actually do. So that's a hard channel. Or the drive shaft. The drive shaft is also, what does the tire do? We measure that actually back on the ring gear. There's a sensor that counts and knows how many teeth it has and does all the math and said, this is what the tire was doing. Those are hard channels. Also, the EGT. So every header pipe has its own EGT, exhaust gas temperature probe, that's stuck into the middle of it, and they're all the same. Don't have one deep or one not as deep, so it'll screw up the measurements. You know, I know that. Yeah, I've done that. So, an EGT is an example. So, it starts out cool, and then when you step on the throttle, it warms up through the runs. There's number 1, 3, 5, 7, 2, 4, 6, and last but not least, number 8. So it allows me to see things. And this is just an example run. I'm not trying to prove any point with this one. But just as an example, you can see that as I was putting this stuff up, look at cylinder, there's go number 2. Okay, see how these down here are relatively flat lines. They're flat, they're curved, okay, but there's an arc to them. But this line, the cylinder was lit, then it went out, then it relit, then it bobble, gets hot, then it goes out. It's not happy. So on that run, that allows me to see that cylinder is not pulling as hard as the others are. So I had something I needed to fix there. But again, it's a hard channel. Now, those are hard channels as opposed to, we also have some data up here that are math channels. So as an example, let's go back, put up the motor. There, the engine RPM. So we got our engine RPM up here, and the two mags overlaid one another. And we've got our tire speed, drive shaft as we refer to it. Okay, so that's what the tire did. But now we've got a math channel that is called engine to drive shaft. I can find it with my, there it is right there, my old eyes. Okay, so this is a math channel that divides one into the other, divides the tire speed, the wheel speed, into the motor RPM to get a value and a ratio. So I can see, this allows me to see what the clutch is doing really. But my point is you've got hard data channels and you've got math channels. I can tell in my car, my computer, I've even got things like, what's the tire temperature doing? because I've actually got an infrared beam that shoots out to the middle of the tire. So I know what the tire temperature is. I can know what the oil pressure is, of course, on the run. I can know well, we got one on the wheelie bar. If it hits the wheelie bar, I can tell how hard it hit it. I've got one for track temperature, so I can go back to any run, good, bad, or indifferent, and I can see what was that track temperature, because if it's cold, it's really hard to get a hold of that track. If it's hot, it's really hard to get a hold of the track. So there's a sweet spot where we know, as an example, probably 90 to 100, maybe 105 degrees, you should have a really good racetrack. If it gets colder, if it gets down to the 70s, it can be a bear to get a hold of, as you'll see in a minute. And if it gets really hot, it can be a bear to get a hold of. If it's in the 130s, it can be really rough. So anyway, I got all these various channels. Got the ignition timing up here, the mag phasing. If you don't know what mag phasing is, go back and watch my video on how I set mag phasing and what it is, because we've got that video for you. So anyway, that's what the computer does. Now, the first run that I'm putting up here is actually a good run that we made a few years ago, but this is a 520 run. So first thing I'm going to do is click here, and this allows me to see not the graph, but data that I enter, like what was the weather, what fuel nozzles did I have in it. It's just recording data so I know what the heck it did and what was in it. Well, along the way, I also know what the time slip said for that run. So on this run, pardon me, I had my old guy glasses on. This run was at Woodburn, and I think it was our first time over 270 miles an hour. Car went 531 with a 0, 5.310. Very good run, very respectable run. I wasn't a 20, it was another run I had up earlier, which we'd actually done the weekend before. Nonetheless, this is the first time over 270, and it went 270.59 miles an hour. So I know all the incremental times it went, as an example, just almost 227 miles an hour to half track. That's awesome. And if you can do that, you're doing well. Some of the cars now are just over 330. 330, let me try that again. That's top fuel. In my class A fuel, they're over 230 to half track, which is what I was referring to. So we were about 227 there. So the car was running well. All right, so that's what this run is, or was. We went 227 to half track. We went almost 271 out the back door on a 531 with a 0 pass. So there's the context of what the car did on a decent run. And now we go back and look at some of the channels that I had to look at. There's our motor. Here's our drive shaft. Okay, now I want to show you another channel that I have. This is called drive shaft target. So what we do is, no, that one doesn't line up. I'm going to show you on a different run here. Yeah. All right, we're at Woodburn now at the Fall Classic this year, just back in September, middle of September. And there's the motor we just talked about. There's our drive shaft, so you can see the color here. And now what I want to talk to you about is one called drive shaft target. So the idea of the drive shaft target, just getting a color here that makes sense is all, is I go in on our best runs and find where the drive shaft was at the highest number it has been at any given interval on the track. So that's referred to as the target, as, hey, this is what you did 1, 2, 3, 10 times, whatever. Those are the best numbers it's ever been. That there becomes the goal or the target that we're shooting for to get that drive shaft to. So as you can see here, the first run we're going to talk about actually is without regard to this blip here that we call the hook. Don't worry about that right now. But the point is, the drive shaft was not on that target for very dang long. By where we at? Half a second into the run, you can see that the wheel speed slows down and that target starts marching away from other better runs we made, and the tire increases in speed, but the gap between the two, what it actually did on that run and what the target says you ought to be doing, gets wider. That's bad. In A-Fuel Tuning 101, your tire speed should be at or above your target, and if it goes above, you re-index that target to match that now higher value. So you really need that tire speed to be up there. So we're starting now with Woodburn, the Fall Classic. Now, the reason I want to share this with you, again, I'm not happy with anybody, but I can't do all this myself. I need a driver that does a really good job and knows what they're doing. I need crew people that know what they're doing and do a good job and don't make mistakes. And I need to not make mistakes, and God knows I've made gobs, probably more than the others combined. I'm not perfect. we all make mistakes, but the teams that do well have worked at it long enough that they don't make mistakes, because you cannot tune a car where crap falls off of it or that it isn't running right. There's nothing to tune. So that's what I want to start here. But I need to give you a brief backstory. So we came into the Fall Classic this year with having fought challenges, God darn, all year long. And that's why I'm not going back that far, because I don't want to get too much in the weeds on all the challenges we've had, because this isn't just a bitch session. I can do that anytime I want with my friends here that'll listen to me. I don't want to bore you with that crap. But we'd fought all kinds of stuff, and I got it all worked out, and yet the car wasn't running right. And I go, God darn, something's wrong. So after it was actually the night race at Woodburn in late July, and I could tell, dang it, I've got the mechanical stuff right, but something's wrong. The car performance is not right. So I just had an instinctual idea here. I sent my fuel pumps off to get them serviced and tuned up if needed. I sent every bit of my MSD ignition stuff off to get it dialed in, and if it had an issue, then by God, I wanted it fixed. So I sent off 4 generators. I sent off all my points boxes, my coils, and other electronics, MSD stuff. So we sent all that crap off. So I get back, as these vendors work on this stuff, I get back a mags with a bag of parts I showed you in one of my videos, where Spud down at Fuel Injection Enterprises, he goes, here's all the crap that I replaced in your mags. They needed some help. I go, oh my God, that's horrible. So he tuned the mags up. He goes, yeah, there were a couple of them that were not in good shape. They would not have helped your performance. That's the Reader's Digest version. They would fight you. So perfect. Check the box. The mags work great now. So awesome. So we've got good mags. Well, the fuel pumps. I've gone for 10 years and not sent fuel pumps back, because they're just one of the rare but truly reliable parts of the car. Well, I sent these pumps back after, I don't know, maybe just over a year before they'd been back before. And Dave Settles, bless his heart, my fuel pump guy, he calls me and says, I don't know what you did, but this thing's crap, and it needed a lot of work. So what that means is that the parts and gears inside that pump were worn, allowing fuel not to go into the motor, but to bypass. It was just a leaky internal pump. So he fixed it all up, tightened it all up, and when I got the fuel pump back, I could tell by the chart that he gave me, holy smokes, this thing is moving way more fuel. So I go, oh crap, all right, well the good news is my parts all work correctly now. The bad news is I don't know how long it's been since the fuel pump did work correctly. So what tune-up data do I have to go back to that would say, turn the knobs here to get X amount of gallons going into the motor? Because the knobs and where I had them mean nothing if you were using it to crutch a fuel pump that wasn't working right. So, oh God, this is going to suck. So that's how we came into Woodburn and the Fall Classic. Like, I don't know how to set this thing, but we got to learn, because I don't want to haul a car down south to Vegas and Pomona that isn't right. It's got to be right. So lofty goals and dreams. So that's how we entered to Woodburn and the Fall Classic, and that's what this run is. So what I want to show you is, on the very first run, the car didn't go anywhere. The motor didn't rev up. In a perfect world, we'd like the motor to rev up somewhere around 5,000 RPM, and I'm not going to get real detail in this, and if you ask me questions, I'm still not going to answer them. I'm going to tell you what I want to tell you here that I think will be helpful to you. I really do. That the motor didn't rev up. Notice it didn't get to 5,000 RPM till it was way out here. Well, what was wrong? Well, I can tell you what happened, and that is that when I sent those fuel pumps back to get serviced, and I get them back, and I realize, you know what, I've only got one set of fuel shutoffs, the valves that control where the fuel goes after the pump. I'm going to buy a brand new set, so both pumps are completely set up with the shutoffs, ready to go, bolt on the car, again, lofty goals and dreams, and best laid plans, and I got screwed up. So what happened? Well, one of the shutoffs had the spool installed backwards. Nobody's fault, not unhappy. I'm just telling you what happened. So instead, when Trevor high-sided the car, high-side all the fuel's going to the motor because that's where it belongs, instead of it going to the motor, one of the valves that should have shut off to not return any fuel so that it pushes it all the motor that I wanted, It didn't shut off and open because the dang spool's in backwards. Ugh. So what does that mean? Instead of the motor having 27, 28 or more gallons per minute, it had 18. 18. Oh, God. So 18 gallons a minute. That's never going to work in an A fuel car. So we get it back, and the plugs are melted roach. It messed up cylinder heads because it was too stinking lean. So I found that problem. Oh, you retard, what a moron. So I fixed that problem, and the next day we glued it back together with new cylinder heads, not brand new, but spare cylinder heads that we put on. Put it all back together. Okay, now, by God, we're going to run good because we got that problem fixed. So we go from T1 at Woodburn to T2. And now there's our motor that I've shown you. You already know we're in trouble because it only made it to, where are we at here? About 7/10 of a second before he stepped off, or had to step off. Not at all Trevor's fault. In fact, he did a good job there. But the drive shaft is going nowhere. Change colors, you can see it. Like, well, what the heck happened? Well, crap, here we go. So, I had asked, it's my fault, I had asked for one particular fuel line on the car to be replaced with a new one that I bought parts to make. And there was nothing wrong with the line that was on the car, except I've always felt it was a little short, so it's always a little precarious. I'm thinking that thing's not going to last forever. It's just really short. So let's build one that's the right length with a little extra. So we did. Except that when Trevor stepped down on the throttle and the fuel pressure goes up to 400 psi, it blows one of the ends of that brand new hose off. So if I would have left the hose that we've had on for years, the little short one, a little bit too short, if I would have left that on the motor, we'd have been fine. But I was trying to put new parts on so we'd have better stuff for longevity. So Trevor steps down, boom, blows the end off the fuel hose, and we can see fuel blowing everywhere, all over the car, all over the track, and Trevor wisely lifted. So, oh my God. So there's 2 passes at Woodburn that are worthless. We learn nothing. So we tow it back, and thankfully it didn't hurt anything there. And now we go up for a T3. Well, the problem is, in all this mess, we'd had the motor apart to put the different heads on, you'll recall. And so we did some service work after all this. And as it got put back together, more challenges. So there's our motor. Hey, look at that. The motor's up over 5,000. Oh, my God, we should be really happy with that. Well, I kind of was for a while. Watch this. So now we've got our drive shaft. Put that back up. I'm going to throw up the drive shaft target. So notice that we're kind of bouncing right along until we get, well, about up to here, right in there, about 1.78 seconds. And now our drive shaft starts falling off, and the target marches on. So we were kind of hanging in there. It was not awesome, but pretty dang good, until it quit. Well, what the heck? Why did it quit like that? Why did it not run well? Well, there was a couple reasons. One of them was this. So this is number 4 cylinder that out here where the motor starts to fall off, it doesn't hold its head up, then the motor goes out. The cylinder goes out. Every cylinder makes 500 horsepower, so you can't afford to lose very many of them because it loses power real quick. So there was another mistake made in the valve train with a push rod adjuster not in the cup where it belonged. And everybody that I know that knows these things that talked to me said, Gregg, you have no idea how lucky you were because you can't stop opening and closing the exhaust valve. You put all that crap in there and burn it, and then if you don't open the exhaust valve to exhaust it, it's got to go somewhere. And every time this has happened, most folks have seen, it destroys the motor because it'll blow the head off, blow the manifold off. Nitro is just such mean stuff, but we kind of like it because if you can ever get all the stars to line up, it's just darn near magical. So there's our third run that we have poop happen, and it's not tunable because a mistake was made. All right, so now we leave Woodburn, and I know my parts work. Got the fuel hose, the little shorter fuel hose back on fine. We'll just go with that because at least it works. I've got my pumps that work now. I got my mags that work now. Everything's working fine. Now we get to go to Vegas, where instead of having 1,000 foot of density altitude corrected air, you're going to be about 3,000 foot, and that's actually really good air for there because we're there in the fall, not in the middle of summer. So we head to Vegas, and at Vegas, we run into a problem. So here's Q1 at Vegas. So we're going to put up the motor. There's that motor line, the second mag. We put up our drive shaft, change the color here. Let's put up that target so you can see it. And you go, whoa, whoa, what the heck? We're not even close on the target. We've got no wheel speed. That car's going nowhere. Doesn't rev up, doesn't get to 5,000, and it has no wheel speed. What is wrong with this pig? Well, I can answer that too. Right there is number one. By the time Trevor hit the throttle and that pedal got on the stop, number one went out. I could see raw fuel just blowing out of the number one Zoomy header. And my heart sank. I thought, I've never had a problem dropping a cylinder so dang early like this. How is that possible? You know, well, got those new pumps that are all tuned up and putting more fuel out. You know, yeah, but no, it shouldn't be that far off. Something's wrong. So we towed it back, and I'm discouraged, like, God dang, what is going on? And I studied the numbers. I can see the different nozzle sizes that all go in to make up number one cylinder. And I'm looking at them, and I'm going, they're not wrong. I know how this thing works. They're not wrong. But I got to do something. I can't have it dropping number one cylinder at 0.00 something seconds, tenth of a second, and it's out. That ain't going to work. So I go, well, I'll lean them out. I'll pull some fuel out of it. It's not, shouldn't have to, but I got to do something. So I go out there and take off the jumpers that go from the fuel rail over to the down nozzles that feed the motor when the pedal goes down. And I take the jumpers off. That's where those little drop-in jets are, so I can see what size is in there and pinch it down, make it a little bit smaller. And I pull the jumper off of number one, the first one, and there's no drop-in in there at all. It didn't exist. It was mistakenly left out back here at home before we left as the heads were assembled. Ugh. So I'm not mad. It has nothing to do with anybody. I'm responsible. It's my fault. So the point is, as I'm going, well, that would account for why I dropped number one right when the pedal goes down. There's not even a drop-in nozzle in there to meter or to regulate how much fuel this cylinder gets. That's what they're for. It doesn't even exist, so it's just getting gobs of raw fuel. All right, so you go, well, duh, put the drop-in back in. Okay, McFly, we can do that. I wish it were that simple, but we got more challenges. Watch this. It's just not easy. I'm not complaining. I'm just telling you how we got here. I want you guys to have some context to how we got here and why the news I have now from Pomona is really quite good. But watch this. Okay, so we go to the fuel pump, fuel flow right here. Click, and you, whoa, that sucker's almost off the edge of the scale. Wow. So I just go to the tip there just to pick a place, and right there is over 29 gallons per minute going into that motor. So I saw that, and I thought, dang, that's not bad. Yeah, I know I put number one out and all, but we'll fix that. But dang, this thing was eating over 29 gallons a minute. There aren't many cars in A-Fuel that can burn 29 gallons a minute in Las Vegas. There's not many cars that can do it. So I was puffing my chest out thinking, crap, my car can do it. Look at this. We had 29 gallons in it. And I wasn't really connecting the dots at that point that, hey, wait a minute, time out. The 29 gallons didn't go into the other 7 cylinders. Much of it went into number one cylinder and right out the header out onto the racetrack because there was no nozzle in it. So instead of the back pressure that the system would generate with all the proper nozzles in there, limiting the fuel to the number that it should have had, which is way less than 29 gallons, mind you, being in Vegas. Instead of that, it just allowed gobs of fuel to go in because it was being unmetered. All right, so now I go, okay, I put the right drop in or put any drop in, at least there's something in there. I put the correct one in. All right, check that box. Pumps work, mags work, that's great. Yep. Trevor's doing fine, okay. So now what? Well, wait a minute. I don't know how to turn the knobs for what is now Q3, our last qualifying attempt, because I don't know what the pump's really going to do, because you can't look at the last run when it didn't have a drop-in nozzle in it as a reference. It's not going to, you can't burn 29 gallons. So I instinctually knew, I'm getting too much in the weeds, but I knew that I had to pull fuel out. It's not going to burn that much. So I turned the knobs in a couple different areas to take fuel out of the motor. And the good news is I did. I was successful. I took fuel out of the motor. The bad news is it still didn't work. Okay, so we go to Q3. I'm going to show you what happened. And nobody's fault. It's all my fault, all my responsibility. So we got motor. There's a second mag. Okay, got a drive shaft. Change the color. And now we put the target up and go, whoa, bitch, we're not even close. I mean, this is what it did. This is what it should have did. And it didn't do it. Why not? So now I'm looking at that, and the fuel volume was quite a bit less. It was actually lower than I wanted. And I look at that and I go, what in the world is wrong with this thing? Why is it not accelerating? But here's the point. At that point, Q3 at Vegas, that's my second lap where the car is mechanically together correctly so I can see what numbers it produces from which to tune. That's it. That's all I've had. So you're kind of like throwing a dart at the board because you don't have a history to know because there's been too many changes over the years for that old data to mean a whole lot. So now what? You go, well, crud, didn't run good there, but I can tell you this gets sharing more than I really want to share, but I'm going to tell you at least this much. I looked at those graphs for both Q2 and Q3 at Vegas, and I could tell there isn't a motor problem. The motor's fine. The motor's actually happy. It's not burning the fuel very well. Plugs all come back looking brand new, so it looks rich, whether it is or not. It looks like it, and I knew right then the problem is in the bell housing, clutch. It needed more clutch. So I fly home. Derb stays down there. We've got a car show to do for Trevor the weekend before Pomona, so we do that. And the whole time I'm thinking, clutch. How am I going to do it? Yeah, okay, I need to add clutch. Great. How much and where and all the variables. It's one thing to say it needs more clutch. It's another thing to choose the numbers properly and wisely so that it actually works. You can't just go throw 200 grams of counterweight at it. You got to do it correctly. Well, again, there's no frame of reference for what correctly even is. So we towed to Pomona, and the whole time I'm just sick to my stomach thinking, I got to pick numbers. I got to put this together. So we get there, and we now move to Pomona for Q1, and I made some major changes. Got some input from, from some fellow racers that are great friends, good people. Gave me some input with what could be done. So I put this clutch together that had way more clutch, let's just say. And so now we send it. And what happens? Well, here we go. So we've got motor, and we've got our second motor right there, drive shaft. Change the color so you can see it. You can see the motor doesn't rev up worth a darn, and the drive shaft target is a little closer, but it's still just way too far away. So what's wrong? So I could tell that it was just way too soft and still needed more clutch. So we move on to Q2. But notice now, this is the third lap where nothing fell off, nothing was screwed up. So I got Q2 at Vegas, Q3 at Vegas, Q1 at Pomona. It's my third lap that I have from which to tune. Watch this. So now we go to Pomona Q2. Here's Q2. Here's motor. Here's drive shaft. Change the color. There it is. And now we throw up the drive shaft target. Oh, bitch, look at that. Look at that. Okay, are we there? No, we're not there. But look at how much closer it is. I'm gaining on it. This thing's getting badder and badder and badder. So this wasn't a world record run by any stretch. It went 5:46. But we were elated because I finally had something that was the window was starting to narrow down. Instead of the window being as big as 7 acres, it's now narrowing down. You go, crap, it will respond. When I turn knobs, it'll respond. I can see where we're at and I know what to do. So I was encouraged by that. So now we go into Q3, the last run. And here, what happens? Well, it's supposed to be run. I don't remember the exact time, 4:45, something like that, later in the afternoon, and it does get dark earlier now because of daylight savings time. But poop happens, and so it got delayed. So by the time we got up there, it was getting later, and the sun had been down. And now what starts happening is a really well-prepared national event racetrack is getting cold. So it fell below that 90-degree target I mentioned earlier, and it started getting cold. So I'm going to see, I've heard various numbers, but I haven't even looked to see what this thing told me on the RacePak that it actually was. So we're going to put up motor, and I'm going to go to the track temperature. Where's track temp right there? Oh, yeah, that could have, that could have something to do with it. So the track was 72 degrees. That's really flipping cold. So here's what happened. As I was preparing the tune-up, I was aggressive. I had a lot. I'd turn the knobs way up, and I told Trevor, hang on, this thing may shake, it may blow the tire off. I told him that before Q2 that morning, and it didn't blow tire shake for Q2, but I was getting closer. So remember, Q2, motor, drive shaft, and drive shaft target. Remember how close we're getting here. So I said, turn the knobs up. I've got lots of room to go, lots of room. Turn the knobs up, and I did. And then I saw that, oh, crap, it's getting dark, and crap, it's getting cool out here. It ain't going to work at all. So I went back into my program, and I took a bunch of motor out of it. I detuned it a lot. Unfortunately, I did not detune it enough for the changing conditions that we had. So here's what happens. We're going to splash Q2, go back to Q3, and what do we have? There's our motor. There's our second motor. Here's our drive shaft. Change the color. And if you follow this at all, you can already tell, hey, Houston, we got a problem here. Yeah, we do. We'll get to that in a minute. But here's our drive shaft target. Okay, now check this out. Now our drive shaft target is we're right smack on top of the best run we've ever made until we get out to about 1.1 seconds and it starts to go into tire shake. When it smokes the tires, the tire speed will go straight up to the motor speed. The clutch will lock up. It'll go 1-to-1. This was not doing that because I detuned it enough to not quite do that, but it was going into tire shake. And when it did that, then you lose your acceleration. It's not glued to the track anymore. So the fact that that wheel speed is way higher than the target is actually meaningless. It's worse because you're not hooked to the track anymore. You're not accelerating the car. So at that point, you've only got so many options. My options are done. I can't chase Trevor down the track to do anything. So when I screw up, it's just there, and it's going to be what it is. But now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth lap now in a row where nothing falls off the car, nothing's screwed up, nothing's put together wrong, everything is correct, and I'm starting to get the window narrowed in, and now I'm at my target drive shaft. It's working. Oh, very rewarding. After all the challenges we've been through, it's very rewarding. Nonetheless, goes into tire shake, and Trevor chose not to pedal it. That's what we normally do. Back when I was driving 100 years ago, I didn't pedal it either. My routine was I would pull the brake. So when I drove, I kept my hand on the brake. So you got a handful of brake, left hand on the steering wheel, see the light come down, mash the throttle as I shove the brake forward and it hits its stop, bong, but I didn't let go of it. And then if the car went into tire shake, and it is worse than having your head in a paint shaker. So Trevor's going to have a headache for a couple of days on that, I'm afraid. It's violent, and it tears the car all to crap. It's not good at all. Anyway, so what I would do, because my hand was still on the brake, I'd stab that brake, because what I'm trying to do is to get that dang wheel speed down. It's too much stinking wheel speed that it can't support. So the key to doing this is you've got to catch it quick. If you catch it out here, it's way too late. It ain't going to matter. It's all over with shouting now. But if a person can catch it back here a little earlier, then you can do something about it. So I used to pull the brake, okay? And it was reasonably effective. Nothing's perfect because I shouldn't have had it in tire shake in the first place as a tuner, but my fault. Since then, though, that was back in 2014 and backwards when I was driving, I don't know anybody that does it that way anymore. So it seems like the predominant SOP, standard operating procedure now, is to pedal them. So what does that mean exactly? Well, here's what we teach. If the car goes into quiver, that's my word, quiver means it's not doing that. It's just trying to overpower the track, but it's not there yet. You can still see where you're going. It's hauling the mail. It's doing what I want. That drive shaft would be at or above the target at that point. It's working. If it's quivering, you stay in it. But the moment that that quiver moves from quiver to shake, well, how do you know the difference that fast? If it's quivering, you still know where you're at. You still know what lane you're in. If it goes in a tire shake, you don't even know what racetrack you're on anymore. It is so unbelievably violent, like having your head in a paint shaker, literally. It's so violent. So you either way, whether you pull the brake or whether you pedal it, you must catch it quickly or it won't matter. So what we all teach our drivers to do is when you when you feel it starting to rattle, shake, you must slap it. You do not step off, wait for it to settle down and step back down. That is not what we do. We slap it. So once the tire speed starts to get away, the driver must lift off the throttle and step back down instantly as fast as you can so it's off and back on just like that. And by doing that, you take away the power for just a little bit. And when you take that power away, it allows the wheel speed to slow back down to what is possible to be hooked to the track. Well, guess what? We weren't the only one to have problems overpowering the track in that session because that 70-degree racetrack was 70 degrees for everybody else too. In fact, the folks that ran after us likely could have had a 68-degree racetrack as it got later and later in the evening. Either way, it's cold. So some people were able to detune it enough that they didn't have a problem, meaning it didn't shake at all. But most everybody rattled to 1 degree, shake to 1 degree or another. So there were several drivers that were able to pedal them, slap back, step back down on, and ran 520s and low 530s. I know for a fact, because we were pitted next to him, that Tony Stewart had his shake real hard, and he was able to slap it with 531 with a pedal job, which is very impressive. So I'm not complaining about any of it. I'm perfectly at peace. Everything's fine. Trevor and I are great. I'm not unhappy at all. That it's not about Trevor. I'm just showing you what we got the car to do. That when we're wondering, dear God, why can't you make that car run? There's so many stinking variables that go into this thing that must be right. So back to the night race, when your fuel pumps aren't working right and your mags aren't working right, it doesn't matter that the car's together perfectly. It'll never run. It doesn't matter that Trevor drives it perfectly. It'll never run because the parts aren't what they need to be. So crew does fine, driver does great, but now the owner's a dummy. Let's go with that. Because my parts are not performing correctly and I didn't catch it soon enough. So I get my parts fixed. We come back to Woodburn, and now we've got mistake after mistake and goofy problem after goofy problem. So we learn absolutely nothing except, wow, those fuel pumps work awesome. They move a lot of fuel. So you head to Vegas, and you got more problems with that drop-in that was left out. So it's only once you can have the car together and repeat and make multiple laps, preferably at the same facility. Because you'll recall what I just showed you here was Woodburn, now drive 1,000 miles, literally, to Las Vegas. Gorgeous facility, awesome racetrack. Just different, very different. And now we're done there, and we haul buns over to Pomona. I don't know how far it is from Vegas to Pomona. I know it's about a 5-hour drive or so, but I don't know how many. It's hundreds of miles, whatever it is. Look up, you can figure that out. The point is, we load up the traveling roadshow and drive all the way to Pomona, get everything set up again, and now you get 3 more attempts at it. But you're coming out of stuff not being right. So we finally get it right, and I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled that I was able to get the car to perform like it used to perform, where that drive shaft speed is where it belongs. And I wish I wouldn't have had as much power in it out here. Remember I told you I detuned it? I just didn't detune it enough. That's entirely on me. I didn't realize that the racetrack was 70 degrees. And what had actually happened was NHRA, bless her heart, I'm not mad at them. It's just the way poop happens. But they told us we want you at X time, so we're prepared for X time. We're going to run a tank of alcohol through the car to warm it up. And next thing you know, the NHRA guy's riding around in his scooter, comes up and goes, all right, let's go, guys. And we're just ready to start the car. Well, what does that mean? It means it's in the air, belly pan's not on, the panels aren't on, the dribbler is sitting there. It's ready to start. It isn't ready to go to the starting line. So it got everybody scrambling to go the other way to not warm it up. And it's not a big deal to not warm it up. I can do it up in the starting line. It's no big deal. The point is, we're at a sequence. We thought we had another half an hour, and now we're late. So we haul buns, get all the stuff put on it, haul it up there, and now we're behind the program instead of being on time, and you just feel rushed. All that to say, even though I knew I was going to have to detune it, and I didn't realize how cold that racetrack had gotten. If I would have had the time, I'm not blaming anybody, I'm just telling you it's what you got to work with. It's my job to figure this out. I'm not blaming anybody. But if I would have known that racetrack was 72 degrees, I guarantee you I would have pulled more out of it than I even did. And I pulled quite a bit out, but I would have pulled more out. 72 degrees is a cold racetrack. There were a couple of people that made it down, and they hauled buns in that session because the air was quite good. So there's a lot of teams that ran really well. And even the teams that pedaled, though, they ran well. So it's all the woulda, coulda, shouldas. I'll never know what it woulda, coulda been. I don't know. I just know I've got to go through a long winter till we run next season with the knowledge that of what we did. Problems at Woodburn. It started with problems at Vegas, but it started to get better. By the time we get to Pomona, a lot more clutch and some other changes I'm not talking about. And what did it do? The car starts to respond, and we've got drive shaft that we haven't had in a long time. The car's running well, and it didn't hurt itself. Driving it while it's shaking screws up the reverser, but if your tune-up's off, you can melt the cylinder heads off of it. It does a lot, or throw the rods out if you're off. You can screw a lot of stuff up. So I was just really thankful that we didn't hurt anything there at Pomona, tune-up related at all. It worked great. So I'm real happy with that. So that's what we did, and that's what the car did and what it's doing now and why I'm pretty encouraged going into next year. It's certainly not the ET slips that I'd hoped to come home with by any stretch. It's not what I'd hoped to give to Trevor and work my buns off to give to Trevor, a car that runs well and is properly prepared when we show up. It didn't work out that way from all the stuff we shared, but it wasn't for lack of effort. I pour my soul into this thing trying to make this right, and I appreciate everything that Trevor did in his part from sponsors to dollars to make this come together, and makes my dollars less. Still a lot of money, but it makes it less, and it certainly helps. So I appreciate Trevor very much, and I appreciate my crew very much. They work really hard, but you've got to get to the point where, as we say, nothing falls off the car, and that's just metaphorical for the dang car's right. It has to be right. I was talking with somebody at the track about how challenging this is, and one of the better word pictures, metaphors that I've come up with is this. Running this car is a lot like having a lock, a key in a lock that's a 100-pin tumbler, okay? Imagine that in your mind's eye, 100-pin tumbler. If all 100 pins are in the correct place, it will run and it will fly, and it's damn near magical. All it takes is one pin out of the 100. So you can have 99 of them perfect, but if one of them's off, you'll look like the world's biggest idiot. Because you can be off by that much, and it will make you look like you're off by that much. It's stunning the way this nitro stuff works. It's either right, not close, not nearly right, damn right, perfect. It's either right or it's not. And that's in its preparation. That's in the parts, how they work. That's in how the tune-up is put in the car, what tune-up's in the car, what the tuner does, and it's how it's driven. That all must be perfect. And if it is, the car will run. And if it's not, it will never run. So I'm excited to go into the winter knowing I've got my car back, that it will run. And we're excited for next year. We've got announcements coming on that and what's happening there for next season, but I'm going to save that for the next video. For this video, I think I've taken way more than enough of your time. Appreciate you guys very much. You need to come back and find that Larry Dixon Cool Kids Club podcast. That was a hoot. If you ever want to know anything about Top Fuel and about his two-seater Top Fuel, the only one on the planet that has one, that's his. It's really cool. Really cool. So I hope you come check that out. We had a great time together, and I'm in his debt for spending time with me. It was such an honor to be able to interview an absolute legend in our sport. So it was a good time. Appreciate you all, because if you're here, you too are cool. If you're part of the Cool Kids Club, and I appreciate your watching and care about this stuff, you honor me, and I appreciate you all. Please like, please share, please share. Please share and please subscribe. Be a part of this program. We appreciate you all very much. God bless y'all. Thank you, guys. Good night. Maggie, what'd you think? We ready to go home, kid?
Brothers and sisters, thank you. Thank you so much. We have come so far, yet we have so very